Well, Sophie, it looks like the Zoom system is fully functional and the recording has begun. And we have two participants. And I've got my water bottle handy.
Got to stay hydrated.
Yes, and my wife has purchased the super expensive coffee from Puerto Rico that is perhaps the most delicious and awakening coffee I've ever had in my life. And that was a wonderful gift since I just got home at 1:30 last night driving in from a client in Nebraska. So I'm exhausted, but excited to be here. Now, thank you, Sophie, very much for organizing the webinar, getting the invitations out and gathering together all the data. Now, my hope, how has it gone in collecting questions in advance from our participants?
It's great. We've actually got quite a few questions from our participants, but actually, would you like them now or later on?
Well, thank you for asking. Not now. Please, please apply those questions when you think they would be most appropriate during the presentation. And that would benefit me as a presenter because I would like a regular interruption of the flow of information. And I'm not saying that I'm worried about being boring, but I am worried about being boring. So
you're never boring.
You're very kind. But anytime you can drop in questions, as we're going to cover an enormous amount of information in a very short time. And I'm sure people who are participating are going to want to stop and calibrate and focus and seek clarity as we go. And so I want to, if you've logged in now and you're going to join with us for the next 45 minutes, I would welcome you to enter your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and Sophie can gather those in and deliver those.
Yes, if you do have any questions, please enter them in the chat box and I will make sure that we answer those questions for you. Okay, Dennis, it looks like we have enough participants to start our webinar.
Well, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. The information that we're going to share with you right now is a result from 30 years of experience and serving several hundred different church capital campaigns successfully and a handful of disasters. And I feel like reverse engineering, examining failures is a very important way to prepare for your church capital campaign so that you don't repeat those same mistakes. And I would welcome questions about failures and mistakes. I am a devout follower of the philosophies of Chuck Norris, who once said, the key to success is to find out what does not work and then don't do that. So we'll cover the negatives. And I'm so glad that you're tuning in now to get ready for your 2022 church capital campaign. We'll give you lots of information that you can leap into action and proceed with to ensure that you will be a success. Now you can share this webinar with friends and coworkers. This is part of our ministry to give away virtually everything that we have. And you can get access to this webinar after it is completed by going to our website, and you'll see many, many training videos that we would like to give away for free. And we give away our time too. So if you'd just like to talk about your church capital campaign, you have some burning questions, give me a call. There's my number, or you can send an email to Sophie at office@church-development.com, or me, Dennis, DENIS, at church-development.com. The agenda is pretty brief and succinct, even though we'll be covering a wide range of activities for your preparation. I like the idea of getting your ducks in a row now so that things go smoothly later. So we're in the middle of October. you really have 2.5 months before 2022, and there are some things that you really need to do this minute if you want to have a spring church capital campaign. So getting your ducks in a row is our overarching theme, with some real specific common sense activities I'd like you to address. In general, I would like you to just have a basic working paradigm that you need to get consensus on the plans. Start from the inside and work your way out, and begin with the challenge that you are experiencing. And you want to engage virtually everybody in the discussion of how do we address this challenge to move towards our vision as we fulfill our mission. Now, I am not like the character Tom Hanks played in that movie Castaway. I could not do my own dental work. I prefer to hire a professional in that regard. As a matter of fact, I prefer to hire professionals who know what they're doing, from plumbing through dentistry. And I encourage you to hire professionals in that regard too. When you're seeking to get consensus on a plan, please spend a little tiny bit of money and hire a professional facilitator. If you need one, I know several I can recommend. It's totally worth the money. We want to decrease the stress on pastors. A professional facilitator can do that. You can get a lot of expert advice for free. Start getting it right now. Talk to architects and builders, talk to fundraising professionals, get their opinions, talk to church loan experts as well. They will share with you lots of free information. We all consider it part of the sales process. We want to give it away. It would be a great idea to select your church capital campaign consultant early. You don't have to pay them early, not until work begins, but they can help you set in motion the right things to do. A real action plan that you've got to implement before the end of the year is to conduct your feasibility study survey, and we'll walk through what does that look like, and how many weeks does it take, and what outcomes will be a result. Now, we want to hear from you, so please type in the chat box. What do you want us to focus on? What are your greatest concerns? And what resources do you need to help your church be a success with a capital campaign that you are planning? So tell us what you think. Now, our basis for the information that we're sharing, we've been doing this since 1992, and before that, since 1983, 83 to 92, I worked with a wide variety of different nonprofit organizations. From, I think my first client was a hospice, and it was museums and colleges and medical schools, all kinds of different nonprofit organizations. And then in 92, I founded Church Development just to focus on church capital campaigns so I could live out my faith. And it was the best decision I ever made. We're a little bit different from other church capital campaign consultants. You know, we proceed based on scripture, and that's augmented by lots of research. The ask is based in prayer and discernment, not pressure. That's very different. Usually our churches have an increase in weekly giving for 3 years afterwards, and we're with you for those 3 years. We also have a spike in planned giving as well. We want to be deliberate about that as a follow-up to the Every Church Capital campaign. My favorite scripture as a basis for our work is 1 Peter 4:10. Like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received. So we adhere pretty strongly to the stewardship mindset. Everything that we have is a blessing from God, and it's up to us to be a conduit for that blessing. So it's not really a fundraising activity. I have this magnificent science group that I am part of, that I've been a donor to since 1994, and that is fundraising. We're super direct about asking for donations, and we don't use religious terms. We talk about fulfilling a mission and making scientific discoveries that will benefit mankind. And fundraising and stewardship are a little bit different. And serving a church, you want to base your decision making in prayer and discernment, and that's a very different approach to fundraising. In our consulting experience, I've got 10 coworkers and have had many coworkers over the past 30 years, but but we together have served hundreds of church clients, and I've written 4 books, and we'll give you the best one, in my opinion, the Stewardship System, How to Increase Generosity Without Fundraising. My academic research was published in the International Journal of Innovation, Education, and Research, Volume 5, Number 8. My wife reminds me I can go 0 to boring as soon as I put that research hat on. Really, the total amount of money that we've been part of raising has been more than $1 billion. And to see that many donors and campaigns flow by, it would be difficult to not learn something. However, we also draw from the corporate sector and the academic sector. My favorite academic research is Daniel Kahneman, who got a Nobel Prize in behavioral economics. You can read his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I've also been member of these professional organizations over the course of many years: the International Catholic Stewardship Council, the National Association of Church Business Administrators, which is now called the Network, and many other related professional associations that keep us up to date. Now, the challenge that you as a church leader face, all of us face when we're active as church leaders. Number one, a preconceived notion: we can do a campaign ourselves. You can, but you're probably going to raise a lot less money. The average do-it-yourself campaign raises about 50% of annual giving in 3-year pledges. And a professionally managed capital campaign, we average 2.5 times annual giving. And that's debt campaigns, which might raise 1.5 times annual campaign, to new construction, which might raise 3, 4, 5 times annual giving. We just finished one where we raised 7 times annual giving, and another one 5 times annual giving. So new constructions is going to have a much higher return on investment. Debt campaigns is going to be lower, but so what? You still do just fine raising money in that regard. Okay, so Sophie, I'm sorry, you got a question. Forgive me. Thank you for popping up that little hand.
No problem. We just got one question in. What are the typical mistakes that a church makes? Because I don't want to make the same mistakes.
Oh, well, thank you. That's perfect timing. Okay, so one of the mistakes. So is this number one? Thank you for your perfect timing. Is you don't have to do it yourself. It's kind of like plumbing. I have a gigantic scar on my bicep from my attempt at plumbing and soldering together copper pipes. I could do it, but I now have a scar, and I still ended up having to hire a professional after I ruined it. You raise so much more money when you have a professional. Their modest costs are more than paid for by the enormous amount more money that they raise. Number 2 is a real common mistake. Consensus is just so very important. So please begin right now. If you're going to do a spring capital campaign, let's say with a May commitment Sunday, today is a good day to start building consensus. Pick up the phone and call somebody, starting from your top donors down, to ask their input on, here's a challenge, there's our vision. What do you think we should do? So consensus building takes a long time. It's extremely important. Another common mistake is designing the Taj Mahal that's outside of the financial possibilities of your church. So having people on your team who can help advise you, like you need a church loan expert, you need an architect and a builder, you need a fundraising person, you need a planning facilitator, all those people working together and talking to each other to help you have a better understanding of what is possible for your church. And the 4th one is what we talked about a little bit earlier: stewardship. One of my favorite authors in this field is Henry Nouwen, who wrote a book called The Spirituality of Fundraising. And it's a very brief book. If you call me or email me, I've got a stack of books. I'll just give you one. I am that big of a fan. I bought 30 of them to give away. And in there, my favorite quote is that we're asking people to join us in our commonly held vision. So it becomes an act of prayer and discernment, and not a pure fundraising asking for a contribution. So to make this a spiritual act and not an economic act. So thank you, Sophie. Please leap in with other questions. So get expert help, get everybody involved in consensus building. Be realistic, develop your plan in phases, and think of this as a prayer and discernment activity. And actually your best resources are going to be lay speakers who can every month get up in front of church and make an announcement and tell a story about their prayer and discernment life as they seek to do God's will in their life. So when I say get your ducks in a row, I really want to shift from the big picture to the extremely pragmatic. So early on, I'd like you to put together a small group. It could be you, the pastor, a staff member, a leader, volunteer. It'd be fine if it was just 3 or 4 people, but you need somebody who is with you, who could meet weekly or bi-weekly for the next couple months. And they don't have to be long meetings, but getting your ducks in a row will just solve a whole lot of problems later. One of my favorite authors is Peter Drucker, who is no renowned in the corporate world as just a guru of management and leadership. And I'm taken by his quote, "Good marketing makes selling superfluous." I like that because I feel like getting your ducks in a row makes running a church capital campaign easy. So one of those easy things you can do is point B here on your screen, identify your past top 10 donors. That's only a click of a button. You can ask your accounting person, and you don't have to know the amount, but just give me the names, okay? Then the next thing you need to do is take your entire database and run that through a wealth screening, which is very inexpensive. If you need to hire somebody, let me know. I can refer you to somebody so you can understand who are the potential leadership donors that you need to ask their opinion of. This is something you can do this minute. Yes, Sophie, you have a question, so please fire away. Okay, you're on mute though.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, one of the questions is, when I'm getting my ducks in a row, do I really need a committee?
Okay, well, thanks for asking. Yeah, I think so. I think 2 brains are better than 1. And so I would say yes. Please pick somebody who is organized and inspired and active. And they will really help you avoid your blind spots. So it can be 2, 3, 4 people. That's all you need. And they can help you with this, and they'll help you tailor your actions to the unique personality of your church. So we're going to start out with identifying potential leadership donors, past and potential leadership donors, and we're going to start engaging them and asking their opinion. It can be telephone calls, it can be coffee, it can be lunch. It'd be great if your pastor was involved in doing those activities. Very low key, just very low key. Set up 1 or 2 of those a week. And I myself like coffee, as I was confessing earlier. I like meeting for coffee. My mind is clear, and there's, coffee dates are not long, they're not an hour and a half long. They're not like a long lunch or a dinner. They can be 45 minutes, and you can get a lot of input individually or in groups. Begin your dialogue with, here's a challenge I'm aware of, and here's our vision. What do you think we should do? Ask for their advice. It'd be great if you could somehow quantify it. And I am working with a brilliant pastor in Nebraska who at the moment who uses the term occupancy at peak activity times. And he will go forward and just quantify that. And he says, well, we're over 80% booked up. We're turning away groups and activities and classes. And it's the youth and children to get first priority. But by golly, the adults want faith formation too. And we want opportunities to invite new people in the church. But we're just out, and so we're in a quandary. Those are great problems to have, and I don't want to stop having those problems, but I want to address that. What's your advice? Take a pad, take notes. They will be your brain trust, and consensus will emerge. So this is the first step for getting your ducks in a row. the next step is you got to expand your visioning and consensus building from the small group to a much larger group. Yes, Sophie, fire away with another question.
Okay, we have a real important need, but it's not urgent. Why should we do a campaign in the spring?
Oh, well, that's a good question. So if you have well, like the pastor in Nebraska, it is important, but it's not urgent. They could go on like that forever. They could be, the cup runneth over, and they could never add space. That could be their choice. And the pastor, I was with him in a top donor cultivation event the other day, which usually, I usually don't go to. It's usually I facilitate and help organize and get a local, an insider and the pastor to do those things. And that's probably the healthiest way to proceed, not doing my, I should not be the center of attention as a consultant. It really should be the insiders. And as I am listening, I realize that the pastor is communicating. He doesn't really want to do this. This is not really fun for him, but it's extremely important because it fulfills the mission of the church. So if you have this challenge and it's not a crisis, you got to make a decision to take a deep breath and jump in because it will fulfill the mission of the church. That's got to be our motivation. So yes, Sophie, do you have another follow-up question kind of related to that?
It's not related to that, but I have another question.
Sure.
Our attendance is down as a result of COVID. Can we still do a capital campaign?
Yes, yes, you can. And we completed several pure COVID campaigns. In the last 18 months, attendance at some churches has dropped to zero, just zero attendance, 100% online. And we've done several campaigns. And I'd like to highlight Our Lady of Lourdes Parish in Atlanta, where they have a very exciting vision. It's so exciting, and it's adjacent to Martin Luther King's boyhood home. So that's kind of cool. And they really need it. And they have this really dynamic, really well-loved pastor. And he's just a delightful person, and they're organized and very competent lay leaders. They could put it off forever. But they just decided, well, we've got momentum. Let's do this. This is part of our long range vision. We could put it off forever and stay in our little tiny overcrowded church. But let's do this. Do we want to wait, or we want to get it done now? It was 100% Zoom, no in-person contact at all. And they totally hit a home run. They not only hit a home run with their internal members, they got donations from outside the church. And then my coworker, Daryl Prater, he completed 100% online with the Father's House, a non-denominational church that was remarkable. They have a really strong Facebook presence, a really dynamic pastor, and they got a bunch of donations from outside of the parish as well. It was remarkable. So the answer is yes. I mean, we have a bunch of Hillcrest Christian. Anyway, we have a bunch of examples of COVID church capital campaigns that were smashing successes. Now, I really, of course, I'm very curious as to why. And I think part of the reason we have to blame for this success is the stock market is at 34,000. 10 years ago, it hit a low of 10,000. So we have a pretty enormous increase in assets for those who hold assets. We've had a remarkable number of leadership gifts. So as you plan your capital campaign, please promote the requesting of appreciated assets. We've done that, and good golly, has it really worked well from within your congregation and outside of the congregation as well. So great question. So if you keep them going. So in this slide, we talk about vision consensus. Please get a professional facilitator. They know how to do this. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's not very expensive. The standard components are to conduct a town hall, Zoom meeting. You can do in person, you can do Zoom, you can do a combination. You want to share information. You want to survey people. You want to prioritize what the people want to do. within that survey section, please use SurveyMonkey or another online instrument like it. Boy, it just doesn't cost anything. And you can do a survey a month to help you gather data. And data is the breakfast of champions. It doesn't cost anything to collect it. And boy, does it really help you as you prioritize. I'm working with one church right now, just north of me, where there's a small, very vocal group of people who are unhappy about something, and I haven't figured out exactly what they're unhappy about, but they're making their voice heard. And the minute we quantify that with a survey, it gives me tremendous relief, because it's literally 10 people out of 2,000. They're very articulate and intelligent and good looking. But statistically, they do not share the vision that the entire parish does. And we've got $500,000 already in outside gifts towards this very exciting vision. So I have not figured out the source of their discontent, but statistically, I can measure the impact. And when you have 99% of a congregation in agreement and moving ahead, you've got to really respect the wisdom of the whole, regardless of how articulate and good looking the dissenters might be. Of course, you want to engage your board, your pastoral council, your session, your elders, whatever you call your leadership body, because they've got to be kind of the soul, the board of directors of the organization, to make sure they've got to affirm the vision. They've got to be the spokespersons to announce it. And they're your first source for being your lay speakers to communicate this to everybody. All right, so this vision consensus, extremely important. Now, I would like you to be equipped so that you don't get yourself in trouble. Earlier, you asked a question about problems and issues, challenges to avoid. This financial modeling is extremely important. One of the most brilliant financial forecasters I've met is a woman named Charity Keene with M&A Consulting. She has educated me. The people at Commerce Bank have educated me. I just feel very grateful that I can share with you statistics that they have shared with me. The average project is 4 times annual giving. So you can do that math right now. If you just look at hundreds of church capital campaigns, the normal project is 4 times annual giving. The disaster comes when you shoot for launching an irrevocable or irretrievable project that's 10 times annual giving. The average loan is 2.5 times annual giving. The average capital campaign is 1.5 times annual giving. So our average is closer to 2.5 times annual giving, which means you're going to have a lower loan. The church loans max out when they reach 30% of your expense budget. Different denominations have loan policies as well. I just spoke with a pastor yesterday who said that their diocese requires they have to have half the money in cash and half in pledges before they break ground. And that's a tough one to pass up. So as you do your financial forecasting, keep these parameters in mind. One of my old clients chose to break this, and they're still struggling. All of their money, they did 10 times annual giving for their phase, and they're still struggling with a 20-year loan and not making any progress on it. So I can share with you my fundraising forecasting, and feel free to consult other church capital campaign fundraisers. If you've done more than 100 of these, you begin to see patterns emerge. The average capital campaign for a church raises 1.5 times annual giving. We do 2.5 to 5 times annual giving. Do-it-yourself campaigns tend to raise 50% of annual giving. All right, let me pause there. Yes, Sophie, thank you for another question.
No problem. This one actually has to do with finance.
Okay.
Weekly giving is down. Should we do a church capital campaign?
Oh, okay, thanks. A lot of churches, their giving is down. And I would hearken back to pre-COVID days when we would be enlisted to conduct a church capital campaign. About 99% of the time, I would be in a dialogue with the leadership body and someone would say, Dennis, we can barely make our budget. We usually have to have a year-end appeal so that we can end the year being in a modest surplus and not in a deficit. How on earth could we ever do a church capital campaign in those circumstances? And when the first time I heard that about 30 years ago, I was really worried. But now I've had several hundred church capital campaigns with the same fear facing us. And almost every one of those have been a smashing success, that I no longer worry that we are not going to have a successful church capital campaign. And I've really kind of dug into why that exists. And I've really become a fan of behavioral economics, in particular Daniel Kahneman, who won that Nobel Prize I mentioned just a little bit ago. There seems to be a bifurcation of our thinking in the giving to churches, and I would recommend two books if you're interested in the subject. Number one, Giving Matters, and number two, Why Catholics Don't Give. And they examine the underlying causes why we're not very good givers. Catholics, for instance, give 1.2% of their income to their churches. Protestants give 2.2%. Only 5% actually tithe. So why do those people tithe, and why do the rest of the people not tithe? That's really a good question. And what does it take to move a Catholic from 1.2 to 2.2%? What does it take to move a Protestant from 2.2 to 4%? Those are really good questions. And we were able to do this in every single one of our church capital campaigns. And annual giving tends to go up 7% as well. So it's counterintuitive, but the techniques I'm giving you right now work. And we've got this proven track record over several decades. Yes, Sophie, you got another question?
Hi, Dennis. Yes, do you think the impact of COVID will decrease by January?
Well, I think so. I hope so. I'm not a medical professional. I tend to follow the advice of professionals. I did, I don't like getting shots, but I got my COVID vaccine, and I do wear a mask whenever somebody tells me to. I do that. It's kind of funny. One of my worries is, what if I got COVID and didn't know it and passed it on to somebody who was not vaccinated, and I was somehow responsible for their illness. So I'm deathly afraid of that. So I'm sure going to follow the rules in this regard. I don't know. From what I read, I'm optimistic that the impact of COVID will decrease. All right, but let me go back to financial forecasting and fundraising. Rather than doing a project that's 10 times your annual giving, see that second bullet from the bottom, I would recommend that you do 3 phases. So do what you can afford now, and then segue into 5 years from now, do a second phase. And then 5 years after that, do another phase. At Pleasant Valley Baptist Church, I managed the 7th capital campaign in 21 years. Now that seems like a lot, but we were still a success because we did these principles. We got our ducks in a row. We had maximum engagement. It was based on prayer and discernment, not pressure. Those things work. So not only were we a success in that 7th capital campaign, annual giving went up as well. Now, I do recommend that you do a feasibility study, because that formalizes the input gathering. And it's like an x-ray before surgery. You have real clarity about how much we can raise and what we need to do. So 4 phases of a smaller amount is better than 1 gigantic phase that puts you in a lot of debt. Now, I'll send these to you, these slides to you, so you have this information just because you signed up. But I welcome that. I really like talking to architects and church builders. It really does help if you've got somebody who is a church building expert, because it is a unique animal. Just like a sports stadium is very different from building a residential home. Church construction is a unique set of challenges. And these are very gross generalizations you see in those 3 bottom bullets. You can spend a lot more than that too. You can spend $1,000 a square foot, but these are approximate estimates that I have heard from experts. Take them with a grain of salt. Okay. So thinking about a calendar, you're going to get consensus on your long range vision, get consensus on your upcoming project, get a church loan expert to give you input, get a church capital campaign expert to give you input, get a church construction architect expert, and put all these pieces together. That's really the key. Get your committee together and train them. And we can do that for free. You know, it might take 40 minutes. I'm happily going to volunteer my time to do that as well. They need to know, it's be like groupthink, what challenges do we need to avoid? How does the process work? How does visioning work? What do loans look like? How much can we raise? What will it cost? And they'll help you put together a calendar for action. Now, a real concrete thing that I recommend that you spend money on, and we're coming close to the end. If you have questions, we got about another 5 or 10 minutes of material we're going to cover. But I do recommend that you spend money on a church capital campaign feasibility study. It is an anonymous survey. We usually interview 30 individuals or couples, but we send it out to virtually everybody. You've got to write up a brief summary, a case statement. You've got to write your questions, somewhere between 10 and 20 questions, and we want to tailor it to you, the unique personality of your church. And you do include the money question, and you tell them it's anonymous. But if we were to do this campaign tomorrow, what amount would you consider giving? All right, let me pause and go to Sophie, who's got another question.
Hi, Dennis. Okay, do we really need to do a feasibility study? What happens to churches if they don't do a feasibility study?
Oh, well, that's a good question. If a church chooses to not do a feasibility study and they hire us, then we would do a miniature version of a feasibility study, just in terms of a survey. It wouldn't be a full survey, but we would want to get everybody's input, even if it's a very gentle way, and maybe 2 surveys. I'm working with a church right now where we did a feasibility study, and then we want to prioritize the specific parts of the plan. So we're doing a second survey. So we want to gather input, and man, I cannot imagine being a pilot who is flying an airplane through the mountains in a fog. Yeah, and that's how I would feel. So you need to do this survey to better understand your church. And then number 5.5, it would be really great if we can compare this to other similar churches and what their outcomes are. So that's a really valuable step. Recently, I completed a feasibility study where the negatives were very low. And I had a very astute person say, well, how does this compare to other churches? And my response was, well, in this regard, the norm is to have 20% of the people being against the project and 20% of the people wanting more information. And the fact that you're down much lower than that is a very good sign. So it's a green light for you to move ahead. The result of a good feasibility study is a set of tailored recommendations unique to your church on how you proceed. And every church is like a human being or a fingerprint. They're all just very unique. We all have fingerprints, but boy, every fingerprint is unique. And you get a detailed calendar for action that will proceed from that feasibility study. Now, our next webinar, we're planning ahead for November 17th, organizing your year-end ask. And I want to talk about this now before we go, because I really want you to push for a gift of appreciated assets. And it's because I have financial planners tell me they expect some pretty significant tax changes that might affect charitable giving next year. So anything that you could do right now to pursue gifts of appreciated assets. Now, before we go, Sophie, do we have any other burning questions that we need to address before we close?
I do. I have a few. So once you've answered each one, you can just come back to me. You are proposing a lot of activities and we are still not getting together in person. Can we do this online?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, let me go back up to the feasibility study. We completed a feasibility study recently completely online. And we did phone calls and Zoom meetings and surveys. Daryl just completed 3 successful church capital campaigns completely online. And yeah, he's almost Superman, but he's not bona fide Superman. I mean, he's almost a miracle worker. But if he can do it, other churches can do it as well. So yes, you can do a lot of these activities online. Now just think about it in your own lifetime experience of you in your church. When was the last time somebody asked your opinion about how we might proceed? I only say that because in my lifetime, that's I'm 64, and that might have happened twice in my entire life at church. So in a lot of people, that number is zero. I'm happy to give input in virtually any way at all regarding my church. It's a very important community. It's a very important part of my life. And I think everybody who goes to church feels the exact same way. I'm happy to complete a survey or talk to somebody. And I'm happy to interact with people online. And it's kind of the weird thing that's actually been a benefit of COVID. We're all more comfortable interacting online, which, gosh, it's made holding meetings just a lot easier and quicker and saves money as well. So thank you, Zoe. That's just a really good question. Long answer, but the answer is heck yes, you can do this online. Thank you. Okay. And you got another question before we go? Fire away.
I have two more questions. What will be different in 2022 in the church capital campaign business?
Okay, well, that's a really good question, because I feel like this past year and a half has been a gigantic transition in a couple of different ways. And I don't ever want to say COVID has been good for anything, but it has been good for online meetings, and it's been really good for online giving. So before COVID, it was a big trend to push people, dragging and kicking towards electronic fund transfer, automated giving, all those different ways that a person can click and give, having an app on your phone with your church that you can just click and give. But boy, COVID just accelerated that. So 2022 and beyond, online giving will be the norm. For instance, if you do not have an app for your church where a member can open their phone and just touch the app to find out what's going on in my church and give and set up automated giving, then you're behind the curve. So please do that immediately. So a big change in the future is automated giving. Another big change is COVID has changed our comfort level with participating in worship services, sitting looking at a screen. Remember the first time my wife and I did that, it felt really weird, and now it does not feel weird at all. We have done that so many times. So if you have not yet invested in quality audio visual broadcasting, you're going to have to do that. And you're going to have to do that just right now. And people will donate to that, so it's not really going to cost you anything. I'm working with a marvelous group. We just finished a campaign, a complete online campaign in Batavia, Illinois. Brilliant pastor. When I first met her, I thought she was a rock star. She looked like a famous rock star. To this day, I think maybe the rock star was Debbie Harry, and she's just a dead ringer. And she still might be Debbie Harry. She just might be going by a incognito name. But we did everything online, and the capital campaign was a smashing success. So you can do it, and they have spent money on completely updating their audio visuals, and it's working. They have a lot more people attending services online now, and that's going to be all of us. And this particularly has an impact on church shoppers, because now that is a term. I'm sorry, it's pejorative, it's negative, but church shopping is a thing, and you had better have your game on for your broadcasting, worship, and social activities, because that's how people pick a church now. Isn't that crazy? All right, Sophie, you got another one. Forgive me for carrying on about 2022. Fire away.
No problem. Have you had any good surprises during COVID?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you asked that, because I actually wrote down, well, a big surprise I wanted to share with you. And there actually have been two that have literally made my head explode. I did not see these coming at all. And I'm like, this changes everything. And one is gifts from outside the parish. Like, that never happened to me. Like, in 30 years, that never happened. Then all of a sudden, COVID hits, and well, like the Father's house down in Georgia. Daryl certainly is a miracle worker, but how he managed to facilitate, or it's clearly a miracle. So much money from outside the church. And the other one, the one at Our Lady of Lourdes, it's incredible. And then this one I'm working at St. Charles. This just never happened to me. So things are different from gifts outside the normal congregation. And I'm very happy. And at this point, I'm now vigorous in consulting other churches that this is a thing. So let us start preparing for the pursuit of those gifts from outside the congregation. And then the second one is, I mentioned it just briefly a little bit ago, gifts of appreciated assets. I just couldn't believe the number of gifts that we've got during COVID. You think everybody would be in a bad mood and not giving? Well, it's not true. The number of appreciated asset gifts has just really, it's been my best year ever for gifts of appreciated assets. So I would like you to use that language. I would like you to promote that. I would like you to put that in your bulletin. I would like you to be bold in asking. Please consider a gift of appreciated assets to our church before the end of the year. Please do it now. So set a deadline on December 31st and define it. And usually what results is a couple will have a conversation. What do our appreciated assets look like at this point? And the answer is, our assets are 3.5 times bigger than they were 10 years ago. That's a good sign. Should we give? You might even use that old-fashioned word, tithing. Should we tithe a portion of our appreciated assets to our church? So thanks for asking. Two big surprises. So cultivate those, put those in your plan, and get ready for those. Thanks for asking, Sophie. Okay, you got another question?
Nope, that's all we have for now.
That's it for now?
That's it for now.
Okay, all right, so let's wrap up. I hope you can come to our next webinar. We'll be sending out information about that. But if you do have questions and concerns, give me a call. The number is on this webinar slide set that we're going to be sending out to everybody, or send us an email. I'm happily here for you if you'd like me to volunteer to just help you prepare for your capital campaign. And I'll just do it as a volunteer. It's volunteering is very important to me. I want to tithe both my money and my time. So call me anytime. Thank you so much for joining us. Go forth. Good luck and God bless. Bye-bye. Sophie, thank you very much for helping us to be so organized. And thank you for making those questions fit in so nicely at the perfect time. I just couldn't do it without you. All right, so let's check in with Daryl, and then I've got to track down that St. Anne's brochure too. So I'll be bugging you later today. Okay, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Who will you be sending that to? The brochure?
Father Paul. So I gotta track that down. I got a note from Debbie that says she was not the designer. So
okay.
So anyway, I'm sure we got paper copies, but anyway, we gotta find an electronic copy of that brochure, because that's like the best ever. Anyway.
Okay. Oh, and then printed piece. I know that you wanted the survey on one sheet of paper back to front. I typed that all out last night, but it's 4 pages, so it could be 2 pages. But I got back in contact with Jody, and she might have another solution. So I'll just talk to her first and then get back to you.
Okay, is it a Google Doc? Because I can go on there and help edit down the case to just make, instead of being 4 paragraphs, to maybe be 4
Yeah.
sentences. It is a
Yeah,
Google
it's a
Doc?
Google Doc. And I saved it as a Prince of Peace survey.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's get on that right now, and I'll just trim it down. Thanks for getting the
Sure.
ball rolling. I sure appreciate that.
No problem.
All right. So I'm sure I'll be bugging you later. Thanks for the help.
Okay,
All
no
right.
worries. Bye.
Bye-bye.